something goes wrong, I get
Could you perhaps, I don't want to intervene too much, make a neutral color background, like a black or something?
yeah.
Because it's so bright and maybe distracting from the experience.
That's very easy.
Wonderful.
Ja.
Gucken, ob wir alles aufgeräumt haben. Das ist vielleicht gar nicht schlecht, wenn hier Kabel liegen.
You already made reservation seats? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. We put one there for you, but you know, it's not professional.
This one is not so professional, but I did it.
Okay, you did. Okay. I thought we were also planning to do this. But
I forgot myself.
Okay. Yeah. But you're sitting here and the others are sitting here.
Yeah, because I need access to all there.
Ah, okay.
Maybe.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I'm going to hand you the microphone. Yeah, then I should probably have the microphone close to me.
No, I mean, there are other microphones. You just. Stefan, do you think this background is good, or should I try to find a background that's
Black would be
black?
best. Like everything colorful is really distracting from the thing. So.
But it's black is not intentional currently.
And some dark blue or really dark, or like a contrast to the thing itself. Sollen wir für uns diese in den Schulen stellen? Oder sitzen sie in den, weil die sind ja noch miteinander belegt, oder? Aber wenn, was normal einer steht, oder?
Ja.
Da hält ja da, wo die Säule ist, oder?
Oder ganz am Rand, weil man kann einfach. Also.
Er muss halt irgendwie da hinten zum Außen.
Genau, deswegen könnt ihr hier dann so rechts.
Ja, dass wir hier dann durch die Stuhl von vorne.
Ja, ich sag ich gerade, kann man selber.
Wo ist er denn?
Ich will Ihnen noch sagen, dass wir jetzt Zeug mitnehmen.
Ja.
Okay, manage.
Sonst wird's sauber.
Soll ich immer hier mal ab?
Ah, ja.
When you're done, if you want, there is a room for us up there if you want to
Right.
Okay. Out there and the corridor on the right.
Okay.
Stefan, I changed the background.
Great, thank you.
If it's still, it should be fine. It's
Yeah, looks
done.
good, thank you.
So, a very warm welcome to all of you, everyone who is here in person in the art lab, and everyone who is joining us online. My name is Örjan Damazzano. I'm a researcher here at the Max-Planck Institute for Empirical Aesthetics in Frankfurt. I use music as a model to study the brain, how it enables us to learn new things, to think, to feel, and to be creative. And at a scientific workshop, I bumped into Oded Bental, who is a researcher and composer at Kingston University in London. He was also organizing the workshop, by the way. And Oded's compositions often includes an element of creative interaction between humans and computational systems. And we were discussing about creativity and flow, and we both thought it would be very, very interesting to do scientific research with that as a model. And we found this grant, and it was called Open Up, New Research Spaces for the Humanities and Cultural Studies from the Volkswagen Foundation. And we were very happy when we received this grant, and we're very grateful to the Volkswagen Foundation. And we thought that we could really open up new lines of research. And our aim was to understand joint creative actions and how AI can better support human creativity, understand the relationship between internal creative processes and their outcomes, offer new insights into long-standing questions about how music is created and shaped, and investigate the integration of AI technology into realms that were deemed until very recently the preserve of humans. And what you will experience here today is the work in this project in its current form. And it will be a unique experience because it is about improvisation. So we really don't know what music we will hear tonight. And it will never be played again. And there's a certain beauty to this, isn't it? However, we do have an unfortunate change in the program because one of the pianists, Fredrik Ullén, who is also director here at the Institute, is recovering from corona. That's still a thing, unfortunately. And he's probably watching the stream, so we wish you a speedy recovery. And still, we have two remaining pianists, one of which is Ralph Abelein, who is professor. Ralph is professor here at the Frankfurt University of Music and Performing Arts, and he has a very rich musical life as an active jazz pianist, composer, arranger, conductor, author of books of improvisation, and we will be very, very excited to hear him play today. And before I let them loose, I will extend my thanks to the press team, the graphics team, and the art lab team who has helped arrange this. Yeah. Yeah, so without further ado, I will hand over to Oded, who will guide us to the concert.
Thank you. This is a bit awkward. So first of all, I'm delighted to be here again at Frankfurt. I've been, because of this grant, I've been coming to this institute about once a month in the last, and it's always so pleasant to be here. It's a wonderful environment, so I'm very delighted about this. So, as Örjan said, I'm a composer, and I'm interested in setting up interaction between computational systems and performers, but usually I prefer to sit over there while they do it. But because of the circumstances, I found myself in a situation where I was had to be involved in as more an active part in the improvisation, and I'm not a confident performer. You know, I studied piano, not a very good student, didn't practice, so I really cannot. There's no point in me improvising with Ralph. So what I essentially came up with is the idea that this is a system that together with me enables me to improvise. And I think that's the kind of one of the messages that I guess this project says is that we call this an AI system. We, after a long while, it's now called JAMI, Joint Human AI Music Improvisation. I'm bad with names, sorry. And this system, through this system, it enables me to be creative in ways that I cannot do without the skills as a performer. So the core of the system is that it listens dynamically. You see, you think these are the microphones, but these are for the streaming. They're actually hidden here. So it like the system has two ears that are in here in the piano, and it listens, and it tries to understand and then respond. And I kind of guide this. And I don't have any control over the moment-to-moment things that happen. So I start something and a note will happen at some point. And it will relate to what Ralph is doing. But I don't control it at that level. I control it kind of higher level. And the way we thought this concept will work, because I'm sitting there and it's very opaque what I do, and the nature of improvisation is not always clear. So we'll do a short improvisation, or the plan is to do a short improvisation. We'll see how long it lasts. And then I will explain a little bit more about how the system works and what I do, and then we'll do more improvisations. So we'll do a mix of music making and talking about music making. Okay, I'll try to talk from here. So what my system, so this is 3 years of work of my life in here. And one of the things to say is that now when we talk about AI, we think about a lot of data and machine learning. And so we take a lot of data, we plug it into a mysterious thing called machine learning, and we get something. And we tell it, give me music, and we get something, right? This is not it. This is a system that, while I consider it like the AI, right? It's not intelligent. And by the way, ChatGPT is not intelligent either. But the point of this system is that it's intelligently listening. So it picks up the sounds from Ralph, and it tries to make musical sense of this. And considering how natural we do it, even those of us who didn't study music at all, just by having kind of listened to music somewhere between 20 and 70 years, listened to music and sounds and speech and made sense of all of this for a long time, there are a lot of things we take for granted that it's very easy for us to understand, you know, that this is a piano, but it's a modified piano, and when he's playing fast, and when he's playing slow, and when he's playing a melody and stuff, and getting the computer to recognize all these basic things is really stupidly difficult. So that's why it took 3 years, and we're still not nowhere near there. But it listens, it does understand, it does manage to kind of comprehend some things and then respond. And the response is, I have here about 20 or so modules. So it's a modular system. And I can turn something on, and it will play something at some point. Right? And it can be this. And the notes it plays are related to what Ralph played at the end of the improvisation. And the rhythms are related, but they're not just an echo. It's not an imitation system. It's not a system that grabbed some of his sound and then regurgitates it. It kind of invents new things about it. And I have some control, so I can change the timbre of this sound. I can make it like this. So now we can hear the pitch a bit more accurately. Or I can change the, like now it'll be more to the bell-like thing. Right? And I have others, so I have one that does this. And I can turn another one on, eventually it will come up. This one, right? So I have a collection of options, and each one is both a type of sound and a type of musical behavior that relates in different ways to what the pianist does. So a lot of my role is to listen to what Ralph is doing, trying to imagine, if I turn this thing on now, how it might sound with what I presume Ralph will be playing in a few milliseconds. Is it going to be good? Should I do it? Should I just do nothing? Right? So these are the kind of higher level decisions that I make while the system is churning out what to actually, you know, instead of my fingers going like this all the time, the system does all the moment to moment things. So I think I spoke enough, and I think we should do another improvisation, but wait, let me close this.
Do you want to start this time?
Yeah, so that's another thing that maybe we should mention. So this is one of the things when I design this project is that the aim is that the improvisation system will not impose too many restrictions of the pianist. So we're not deciding to play, for example, if you're in jazz and you play a standard, then you already know the chord changes and you know there'll be this phrase and that phrase and it'll be in this tempo or more or less, and it'll be in 4/4 and stuff. And my system doesn't know anything about 4/4 or about chord changes, or it doesn't require to know that there's going to be this solo and then we're going to play the tune in this. The idea is to kind of do as much freedom as possible. And usually the only two things we decide on is who starts, and maybe how are we aiming for relatively short or relatively long. So maybe I'll start this time. And now we're going to do a changeover, right? Or do you want to do another one?
No, no. Change over.
So we met Ralph. Do you want to start?
Maybe we can. I can dismantle the piano with some music. Let's try
With
it.
some music?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm part of it, or do you want to make it
Yeah,
solo?
You're part of it.
So just a second.
The loud thing starts to.
So, in case you, Ralph didn't tell me he was going to do that, right? So, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about this project and about Ralph, is that the project started, this kind of putting me in the place of an improviser, was all because of the next pianist who's going to join us, David Dolan, who is a professor of, it's a long title, but creative practice and improvisation at Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London. I'm sorry for not getting the title correctly. And to the same workshop that Orion mentioned, which was centered around improvisation, I invited David to also present at the workshop. I heard about his interest in improvisation. We never actually met. And when we met, he was totally not interested in technology. And we met for a coffee, and he asked me about my own work and stuff. And when I told him about this idea that a computer can listen to supporting as a composer, that a computer listens and the performers to a performer and reacts in live, he said, "Well, why don't we try this? You know, come and improvise with me." What he didn't say was that the hidden agenda of this invitation was to show me that that's nonsense, that computers cannot improvise. Fortunately, they were kind of in this first session, which was I don't know, an hour and a half. There were enough hints of interesting moments of dialogue between the machine and him, or my system and him, that it spurred us to continue this work, and it's now in its third year. And David, you can come on stage at some point. So David is coming at this because his main interest is in the idea of reviving the art of improvisation within classical music. And I'll give the really brief thing that improvising was part of the what we call classical music culture until about 100 years ago. Performers wouldn't regularly do it as part of a recital, and this was suppressed, can we say? And then David and some other people are kind of bringing that back very successfully. And since there is one of my composition teachers sitting there, he can attest that my music has never been tonal. I mean, I think I left tonality around the age of 12 or 13. So when we started doing this project, I was really struggling with the idea of, first of all, switching from being a composer over there to being a performer of sorts over here, being on stage doing stuff. And the other is, what do I do with tonal music? So, and to get the idea that I wasn't interested in mirroring back what David was doing. I wanted to make a kind of interesting contribution from my aesthetic perspective as a composer, but I mean, it would have been easy for me to just create very crazy, interesting sounds and just throw them at David and see what he does. But no, the idea is to actually have a real-time dialogue. And one of, I think, of the hallmarks of this project is, well, two things. One, I mean, in the context of current AI research, which I don't know how much you know about AI music, but it's strong. It changed a lot in the 3 years we've been doing, and it's been progressing. But of course, the main focus on music AI is kind of commercial, making money out of it. Commercial music, pop music, what people will do, and there is companies who claim that, you know, just go to our website, sign up, make a few clicks, and here you're a composer. Come on. And this is not that. This is not about commercial, it's about making music, and it's also not about fast change, which is very much in the case of AI, right? You update models, and then the users that got used to the old models are suddenly, oh, what do I do? It doesn't work. Here, it's kind of a long process of carefully developing something until we have a tool partner we can discuss in the, what do we call this, that actually allows us to make music together that we enjoy, that we think is good. So, David, what do you think we should improvise?
What do I think?
How do, what the decision about who starts and how long? Do you have thoughts?
Let's follow what was very successful just now and start with a short one or two. I will start the first and you start the following one. Okay?
Okay. Just
and I wish I could tell you that what Odette said about what I didn't say, which means that I thought 3 years ago that's nonsense, was not true, but it was. It was a powerful lesson.
So as you can hear, David and Ralph are very different pianists. And I think that was, of course, I encountered them in reverse order, right? I think one of the kind of fantastic moments of this project was the first meeting with Ralph, which was a year and a half ago. I don't even remember, 2 years ago maybe, I don't. Last year, only last year, wow. Because it's a system I developed, and it's, well, if you go online now, you can see the stream. It's like lines of code. I actually, I'm old-fashioned. I write lines of code. And it was tailor-made to David. So working this, we recorded some stuff from David, and I played them hundreds of times through the system and kind of tried, changed some stuff. And does that sound okay? Does that sound not okay? And to understand the process, I need to design a system that responds on the fly to an unknown quantity that comes in, and has a very rudimentary notion of what this quantity that comes in, because it doesn't really understand music. It doesn't have the cultural knowledge. It doesn't have the nuance. It doesn't have our brain. It's kind of very far from it. But it has to generate some response that will sound at least good in whatever context that David or a pianist throws at it. And if you don't understand how difficult that is, come and talk to me. But that was kind of developed over many months, and David and I would meet, and then we would try something. And here now I have an interface window with 30-something sliders and 20-something buttons that control all these things. When I got the first session, I had like 4, and then I had 8, and then I had 20. And we would try things, and I would be like, oh, that doesn't work. So things that worked at home fantastically with the recordings I had, and then David will throw something completely different, and like, no, that doesn't really work, and I have to go back and redesign them, and kind of a process of redesigning until we were confident enough that whatever comes out in the interaction is ready for an audience. And it was first an audience of 1 or 2 friends, and then eventually it became an audience of a public concert, and then a few more. But it was tailor-made to David. And then we invited Ralph, fortunately teaching around here. And it was a very nice experience that he came in, and he was playing something completely different. And yet we found very soon, I mean, not the first run, right? But the second day, we managed to find common ground. And the same system that is all algorithmic with some random things crying in and the machine listening, that's the crucial bit, is able to sound very different. I think we will all nod to that the same system, the same sounds essentially, but the different context that the pianist gives gives it a totally different musical meaning. And I think that's one of the crucial things about this odd couple, is that the context that the context between the pianist and the system is sufficiently interesting and rich that you, the audience, are capable of hearing it as music. And I think that's maybe for me, one of the differences between this thinking of AI and the ChatGPT version of throw back at you an amalgamation of what other people have already done, right? So not that we are not drawing on, as you can hear, David has the entire music history in his mind and his figure and managed to conjure some magic out of it. But it's really very different approach to kind of creativity, and what do we mean by creating, than the kind of mirroring back of the average of 10 million human users. Maybe we'll do another improvisation, and then maybe we'll open up. Let's do another improvisation, then improvise our way to the panel. So I think we're going to soon, maybe, should we, maybe it's a good time to switch to the panel, I think. It was such a lovely ending. It was really not lovely. But while we are organizing the chairs, I'll confess to something. So David was supposed to start. It's kind of an instructive thing. At the end of the previous improvisation, I thought I turned off everything, but I forgot to turn one thing on. So when he started, something was ready to start, and you heard some things coming immediately from the speakers, which was not my intention. But it actually worked. Right? And that's what I meant by the fact that the system has to be at least good in every situation. And I'm not sure I can really sign on every single moment in this concert that it was definitely not perfect, and maybe there are kind of some of things that definitely could have been better, and maybe something that I really wish could not have happened. Like in isolated note that I wish, they were a bit quieter or a bit stronger or a bit different, half a millisecond earlier. But there is a kind of, a lot of problem of dealing with the uncertainty. And I think that's why Orion and I are interested in this project, because it forces, it puts AI in a situation where it's usually not currently used, in kind of really highly uncertain circumstances where you cannot go back and redesign the prompt and try that again and until you get a perfection, which is some of the fun of this project and the challenge of this project. Thank you. So I think, I don't know if we need a bit more light on the audience at some point, but they'll figure it out. So I think we want our panelists to join join on stage. Ralph and David, do you want to come back up? And Jonathan Berger, who is a professor of computer music. You need to move me, okay. Composer, professor at Stanford University, director of the Center for Computer Center for Research in Music and Acoustics, and my former PhD supervisor. You can sit. And Julia or Julia. We are still negotiating that. Which is local, and someone else needs to introduce her.
Yes, Julia Christensen is a researcher here at the Max-Planck Institute for Empirical Aesthetics. She is also a former dancer and neuroscientist. And her research especially, I think here at least, has been focused on how aesthetic experiences are shaped by movement and expressiveness. And she's also an author of several books, most recently The Pathway to Flow. And I think that is an interesting topic here for this evening, which is why I'm very, very happy to have you here also. Please, everyone, I invite you to take your seats. Yeah, maybe we can. So I thought I would kick this off, and then we'll see where it goes. It's all improvised. As you have heard, and that has been commented on, Ralph and David plays different with this system. And I'm very curious to know how you think about the system, how you approach the system. And I'm curious to know whether you have sort of the same approach, but just a different expression musically, or if you think about the system in different ways. So maybe first, David, you have worked with Oded for the longest time, and maybe your perception of what the system is has changed throughout. Maybe if you start to give your...
Well, I guess it would be the right thing to say that it has changed and evolved, but it was a Harry Potterish experience in the first time, and I realized that I was totally wrong, and that thing does make sense, although in a much less subtle way than now. And it is still, I feel that sometimes a magician, Oded, is launching some Harry Potter friends at me, and I'm making music with creatures I certainly can't see and can't imagine, but it becomes music. It becomes a musical stimuli and a musical invitation. I improvise. I am very lucky to have some amazing partners, human partners, as improvising partners, and it's different. But it's a trio, although it sounds like a duo or I don't know, nonette, but it's a trio. It's these magical creatures coming from Hogwarts, piano and Oded. And from time to time I feel Oded doing something that makes these magic creatures doing something else. But these are moments. It's mainly music making with a strange partner that makes music. That really, for example, in the last improvisation, which I thought would go totally different, but suddenly, and I don't think I heard it before, ti-dom, bodom, 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 and that's it. That was the thing. And the harmonic modulations, etc. It was just the outcome for me of the expressive association I got from that kind of becoming more and more, wizard-ish. So
in one sense, you have to deal with both fairies and trolls, perhaps. But also, I'm curious to know, do you perceive that there's an agent in there? Is this a system that you're acting with or partnering with, or do you feel that it is Oded who is sort of the Wizard of Oz?
It's all. I mean, it's a dynamic process which, when it works well, and it's being taken by seducing, threatening, forcing. No, when forcing means it's not going well at all. But apropos flow, and that's really important. And apropos something you didn't want, to hear, or when we listen, that's wrong. And the art, apropos flow, of turning a wrong note to a trigger of the most wonderful moment that will take us off, is a part of it. So it's not any of this specifically, it's all of them interchangeable and at times functioning together at the same time. Having agency and being, drawn somewhere, I can't see. It's dynamic. It's evolving in real time when it works. When I have to, so what is it? When I have to kind of intellectualize or use knowledge consciously, that's not a good sign.
And Ralph, then how do you perceive working with a system or playing with this partner?
What I recently discovered is that finding an ending is getting more easy. The ending today, as the last real one, was kind of abrupt, maybe not super musical, but at least it felt kind of right. And to find such a definite ending is always harder than like a diminuendo or a fade out or something like that. And so that's where I feel, okay, we are getting more comfortable. What I feel is still a lot, my responsibility is to shape the dramatic flow of the improvisation. So if we if we go to a quiet part and then to a loud part, and then I feel that the system doesn't provide me with such an kind of envelope of the overall flow, like, or form maybe. But what the system does is sometimes surprise me, and we also worked on that with new elements. Like, for instance, if it's quiet and the system is putting in some a lot of notes or a louder volume, then I can react to that. So the system sometimes decides, okay, now something different. But then, of course, because you said agent, I have to shape that new direction.
So do you think these types of systems, are they sort of tools for improvisations or toys that you play with, or sort of a musical partner in its own right? In some way.
What I had today, the stuff in the piano.
Well, not necessarily the stuff in the piano, but just sort of how you perceive the system. Sort of, is it something that you play with, or sort of, what's the? Of course, I want to communicate with the thing, and that's also the reason why I put stuff in the piano, because I want to get closer to that sound the system provides, so that sometimes it's not really distinguishable what is coming from Oded, what is coming from me. That is kind of, for me, it feels more natural. And of course, I wanna play with it. And sometimes I'm guilty of probably playing too much, but that's probably something I wouldn't do with a human. But I have no hesitation to but of course that's not the goal. My goal is always to find something and that I can work with, and sometimes it works, sometimes not so much. I wanted then to throw out a question to Jonathan, who has been observing us during the week here. We've been collecting data here. We're also studying the embodied nature of music making. We've been collecting physiological responses from the musicians while they have been playing. And you have then observed these two different musicians and how they work and so on. So just from your perspective as kind of a member of the audience, what would you say about the things that they have said now? Is that something that has come across to you?
So we heard three very different musicians. We heard one musician interact with another and one musician interact with a third. And the personalities of all three of them came out, which for me was fascinating. The ephemerality of music is such that that it either works or it doesn't. So this idea of a game, which, I mean, a game is not a pejorative. It's all a game. I kept thinking, relating to what Ralph said about endings, I kept thinking about Edward Said's beginning, middle, and ending paradigm. And there were some times where beginnings worked and sometimes where beginnings worked less. Endings today all seem to work pretty much. Sometimes they don't. The middles are, for me, fascinating because I think that I'm not yet hearing development in the sense of expectation of how something will go. So I hear a piece of musical information being tossed out and accepted by a performer, either on either side. The machine is listening and listening very well, and the information is being caught and played with, but not always developed. And that's not a critique of the system. It's sort of an observation.
Right. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this touches on something that we have discussed in part of this project and is back of my mind. I mean, from the perspective of designing a system. So imagine that you are, for the system to contribute or create this kind of sense of trajectory, right? It needs to have some kind of plan for the future while constantly updating that plan in light of what the pianist is doing. And another Everest to climb, basically, right? Each one of them, essentially, right? Because there are, on the one hand, so I even started thinking about it. Okay, so maybe I can have a very, very abstract plans, and then maybe there are 6, up and down, down and up, straight and up. You can graph this. So okay, that's a good start. And then, how do you? What is the up and the down, right? It's up on intensity, or it can be up in pitch, and maybe to make it work, experience as a composer with using electronics, usually it works when it's both up in pitch and in intensity and in accelerando and in this. And this becomes a kind of really complex thing. And then we even started the fact that you need to constantly update that with a really not a really rudimentary understanding of what the music is that you are reacting to, right? And I think that's, Jonathan is absolutely right, and I am kind of thinking, okay, how many lifetimes do I have, right? So it's on the to-do list somewhere. But I think it's also kind of looking at it, it's a good observation why studying this kind of free improvisation, unconstrained improvisation, is both from a kind of scientific, from a kind of creative point of view, raises all these kind of really, really deep, and you understand what is the incredible artistry and ability that these two guys have, right? To do all of that and update all of that and plan all of that and be not quite aware, but maybe somewhat aware. So it's a kind of really interesting, which is why we thought improvisation is a really interesting topic to study.
Let me say one more thing, and then I'm going to set up Julia for taking over here. So part of what humans do when they interact is aim towards a climax, or what Elaine Chu calls a tipping point, right? Where the music gets to a point where something inevitable has to happen beyond that. And I heard it tonight, but I heard it in sort of a haphazard way. And I think that this idea of trajectory is something that it's not clear to me that over time this will shape itself out because of the system, or if there needs to be some new construction of the system. That's really up to you.
All right.
Did you have
to that specific point? So I want to say that I came to this very surprised, because I didn't think I would be surprised. I thought I would come there would be sounds, and they would not make sense. I would miss the trajectory, I would miss being challenged. I've only been hearing about this project for some months, thanks to Örjan, and I was then invited the last days, and I was just surprised. And why? Because I was feeling what I feel when human performers perform, and that is this flow, this coming into a state of mind where I forget what is around me, and where things have a meaning just by being step by step. And I'm not looking for anything final in that, but actually just following along. And it happened with the first performance I saw with you, Ralph, already the first time, and I thought, how can that happen? And then it happened when I had the experience with you a little later in the day. And this morning, I found you wandering through the hall and looking deep in thought, and you were wondering what makes that happen. What makes it happen that we can find flow with this, and what can make the experience even better? Is it perhaps what we just heard, that we need some sort of meaning making in the situation? Or what is it for you?
So, as I said, I think a lot of the meaning comes from the listener. In music in general, but in this as well. And I think our role as the creators in this is to open the door, kind of enable the opportunity, give the listeners something that they can experience musically, and that invites them to construct a story or a narrative or a trajectory, right? And obviously, if you are a composer and you have at your leisure, considering deadlines, the ability to kind of construct and think, okay, where are we heading, and where is the trajectory and stuff. If you're a good composer, you should be able to create a really convincing and strong timing. And also that the kind of large scale things and the middle scale things and the low scale things, they add up to, right? And there is a lot of craft and creativity and invention and inspiration and hard graft. And that's, I think, what one of the things that is interesting in kind of or very different in improvisation, that you cannot rewrite. And that's, as a composer, it's really annoying. I wish I could kind of rewind and do something else. But to the point, I mean, we've been doing this for some time, and we have still to figure out when is it really excellent, what makes it a performance really excellent, and what makes a performance really good. And I don't have an answer.
Could it be that it's part of the unpredictability that gives us that challenge? So for flow to happen, as we have heard from Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, we should have this perfect balance of skill and challenge of the task. So is it maybe because the predictability is not there, and we are forced as a listener to make sense of it? And I felt mind reading when listening to you, I was in woods, and with you, I was in tiny little glass splinters sometimes, you know, so my mind goes there. So.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think that this kind of the listener's sense of flow happens not just in improvisation, right? It does happen to me when I'm listening to a recording. It probably happens more when in a good live concert, because there is something about the live that is really, and it's probably also social and stuff. But in terms of the experience of our flow as performers and the quality of the music making, yeah, we're still waiting for Orion to analyze the data.
Yeah. So next question. Now, on that topic, I wanted to mention something that Ralph said once during one of our data collections. I don't know if you remember. You said something along these lines, that when you're at home improvising, you know, you start out and you think that you're really, really, really good. And then after a while, you sort of get bored with yourself. And you feel that you can't come up with anything new, and you sort of leave and do something else. And then you said that with a system, you never feel bored. And I'm thinking that that is perhaps one of the one of the things where AI could be useful as a partner to sort of not end up in this rut, kind of. How do you reflect on that now?
Yeah, the system as a stimulus works for me. I don't know if it would work equally well if I had it at home and could turn it on whenever I wanted. But in this environment, I'm really excited to come here and to spend a few hours, and then even you are sitting there, you're kind of also an audience. And Julia was there 2 days ago, and then I had somebody to perform for, and that is really important. That I don't have that in the living room either. Yeah, it is certainly helping not to get bored of myself.
Julia, speaking of pathways to flow, do you think that could be one pathway to flow?
Thank you. So, because the challenge stays there, because you cannot predict, perhaps, what is coming next. I was actually trying to take it into a space that I know more. I'm not trained in music at all. I'm trained in dance, and specifically in classical dance, so more close to you, perhaps. And I was thinking, what would the equivalent be for me to dance with Odette as a system? And imagine I would wear a motion capture suit, and my movements were being recorded and transferred live to Odette, and he's also a choreographer. I don't know if you knew, but he's also a choreographer. And now we have this robotic arm, perhaps, which is performing movements, and I'm dancing with it. And I'm coming up with movements that are responsive to that, but I'm also feeling that it's somehow responsive to me, although I have never seen those movements before. And I'm imagining it's something similar going on here. And I don't know if I would have a meaning-making enterprise happening there, but it would certainly keep challenging me in a way that it would never get boring, because it will always come up with new ways of surprising me and me maybe reacting or chasing it. I think you used that word at some point as well. So I think I have a question of how does expressivity, so my own expressivity that I will use usually as a performer, if I improvise with another dancer, if I improvise with this robotic hand, what will happen to my expressivity? I don't know, but my question maybe to the two performers is, how do you relate to this system? So how I see you're in the zone sometimes very deeply, and that you express yourselves, but is it in conversation, or are you chasing it, or are you trying to control it and tell it do something else? Is that how you express yourself? How is the expression you do with Odette and his system different from if you do it with another human? What is the feeling, and what makes it interesting?
I think that There are at least three elements answering your question. One is a universal element in musical gestures, which are associated with the body language of the speech intonation, which is music. And the actual meaning of what one really means, or what one really feels about what one says, is not really the choice of words, but the music in these words. If you say, "Oh, really?" or "Really?" you are saying two different things, and these are two different stories. So that's one. And the movement, apropos your world, exists also in music, and lack of it is very bad news. And apropos development, which is also to do with movement, and I call it goal point, or Elaine's tipping point, or it's also a part of the deeper level or high level, whatever you want to call it, of arrival to that's movement and the fulfillment of the movement. So, and it all comes down, I think, to the next two things, which is the chamber music business, and not good, an excellent chamber music, a chamber that takes you with it, is neither nor, is both. So you are leading and following at the same time. Sometimes when the motive is driven by the second violin, the rest of the quartet follows them. But it's really the melting down of these barriers. It's also dealing with our very little human element of am I good? How am I doing? And the remedy for that is playfulness and not taking life and ourselves too seriously, which is where a joke or reminder to smile is very helpful, and we had that a lot, you too. And putting it all together in the flow. I mean, and flow for a musician, I think, has several meanings. One is what Csikszentmihalyi is talking about, of course. In chamber music, it's the group flow, but it's also the actual movement from beat to beat and beat to further along the way, beat through the other beats, avoiding stagnation. Yeah.
Maybe one more thing about flow. I don't really know how it's defined, but for me, I get closest to flow when improvising freely, because everything is kind of possible, and it is absolutely a must that flow has nothing to do with being scared. So it has to be a scare-free zone. And when the system is communicating with us, you have to analyze a little bit sometimes. Yeah. Oh, do I like that rhythm? Do I want to use that rhythm? Where is that motive? I don't have perfect pitch, for instance, so I fiddle around sometimes, and that gets me out of the flow, because if I analyze too much, then I'm immediately in that good or bad thing on can I do that? And so it's a balance, and I think that's where like rehearsing with the system probably is useful, to kind of find a way to balance that out, the feeling of flow and still kind of being there with your senses. And that's what improvising groups or chamber music musicians do automatically, but they rehearse a lot. And free improvising groups, there is good group improvisation, maybe from people who never played together, but they all, if it's really good, they all have lots of experience in free improvisation, and so that's why we have to rehearse with the system.
I was reminded of something. We've been talking about what is required of the system, and how it may potentially be developed. And it would be interesting also to talk a little bit about what is required from the pianist. We did a study once, and kind of as a bonus thing, we had pianists try to play Kurtak's Splinters a Prima Vista, which was a horrible experience for most of them, except for one who really loved it. He had a fantastic flow experience, even though he couldn't perform it at all. So I'm wondering, what do you think? Well, you're the performers. We've been talking about this. You know, we've been having several musicians here playing with the system. You know, so what is required from the musician to be able to play with this and to be able to enjoy it? So, what do you think? Maybe starting with David, what do you think is sort of required in order to enjoy playing with this system?
I wish it was Ralph first so I could think about it. I guess not going through the corridor of wait a minute, what's going on? What should I do? But take the first gesture, not sound, not note, gesture, again movement, from the system as an invitation for a game of, metaphorically speaking, ping pong, call and response, even if it's far from symmetrical classical style, 4 bars, just rip. And then the rest following that is a part of it. It's also, as Odette says, is partly the business of a listener, us being the listeners before we start playing. But taking that as a dialogue, again, chamber music and playfulness at the same time. If I'm too much in well, I have to sound as if I'm, serious, blah, 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 that won't go very far. Because we both have, hopefully quite some knowledge, but it's in the background. It's not consciously calculated and manipulated, I'm sure, with both of us. And even free improvisation is free to a certain extent. It leans on unconscious, very often, structures and short-term, mid-term, long-terms. And what helps a lot is that that system got much better and more refined in the ability to gather, build something more structured. Of course, it's not the same game as improvising with a strong fellow human improvising partner. But that's what it takes. The state of mind of dialogue in a stand-up comedy, a real one where nothing is pre-planned. So there's a playfulness of it, and also the sense of rhythm governing everything, including harmonic tension release and the movement between more active and less active pulses going towards a goal point. Again, motion.
Before you start, Ralph, I will prepare the audience that if you have questions, we will take them at some point. So you can already start preparing a little bit if you have thoughts or ideas or things that you want to ask. Churn those for a moment, and we can get back to them. Yes?
I absolutely can't add anything more to what you said. It's totally true. I just want to add one thing that helps me sometimes, just thinking of, usually as a pianist you think, okay, you have I have 2 hands and I have 10 fingers and they all have to be busy. And with the system I often think, okay, I have 3 hands and 1 hand can also, I didn't do that so much today maybe, but sometimes I just rest with 1 hand and let's just play one with because the system is the other hand. So I try to think of it anatomically, kind of, and then that helps me also to melt it all together.
I must say, in that context, Jonathan, today, and the amazing musician he is, it resonated very strongly. He said, you know, why won't you try from time to time to stop, which I thought I did, I have always done, but maybe not as much as I did, and allowing the system to continue from where I stopped and take me back to the duo, and that goes very much along one hand in the pocket, both hands in the pocket from time to time. So less is more.
Do you feel that you did this? Were you conscious about this during the concert? Is that something that you were trying to achieve?
I thought about it a lot since Jonathan, you know, offered that thought earlier today, I think it was, right? And I thought about it before I started to play. Once, you know, once starting playing, I have no idea. I think so, but I wouldn't sign against my piano that was the case.
Jonathan, do you think he did it?
I think that so.
Please take him microphone.
I want to throw out one more word, which is risk-taking. One of the things that makes music magical, and improvisation is in the front end of this, is taking risks and pushing the envelope in almost dangerous ways. And tonight I heard some risk-taking. I was critical of the system in the last 2 days, and tonight I heard elements of the two sides actually venturing out into new areas. So.
And the difference is the audience.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I'm sure. We owe that to you. I mean, that's where music making means music giving and receiving from you what you give us. Once being given, it's when it works, it's a flowing, you know, cycle, and that's lifting us up to take risks for sure.
What a nice segue into inviting the audience. Yes, we do have a question.
Yeah, I'm not a musician at all, but I have a lot of curiosity. And now my question to the two pianists is, do you have more surprises, more surprising moments in improvising with the system or with human partners?
So I will repeat the question just so that the online listeners can. So do you have more surprises when you're interacting with the system or when you are interacting with human, well, during improvisation?
In that very free context, still the human, I would say. Yeah. For instance, I sometimes, sorry, forgive me when I say, but sometimes I think if I hear another major third from the system, ding, I go crazy. You know?
So I learned another lesson here, that I should have another knob that switches from David to this, the intervals, like these are David intervals and these are Ralph intervals.
I think it's a different kind of surprises. The first thing I hear from that system when we improvise together is always a surprise. Because all my life I've played chamber music, repertoire chamber music and improvising with violins and flutes and clarinet and, you know, humans' instruments. So this is each time a miracle again and again. It's actually a very complex question you're asking, because these are different. The surprises that a human improvising partner throws at you in a good concert is you know, the scope of it is bigger. And that's to do with ability to dramatically or storytelling wise breaking the story suddenly in a violent, artistically speaking way. It does also happen with the system, but differently. It's very different. It's not really, I'm not able to compare it as a like for like. It's two different worlds, and I guess I'm in a different inner tuning when I improvise with Brendel, for example. I'm thinking of him, but some of the surprises that the system throws at me, and that's Oded, because he can launch another, he calls it an agent, you call it? Module. For me, it's an instrument. So I play with 20, you know, friends of Harry Potter. None of them is human. And when he launches one I did not expect, isn't a part of the context of what we've been creating, it's a huge surprise. But different from the surprises that a human improviser will throw at you.
So this question expands a bit on what has been said on the stage before, which is that I found that tonight the performers have a lot of the responsibility when it comes to where the music's going, right? I experienced the performers to put in a lot of thought when it comes to form, when it comes to musical genre, when it comes to making all these big decisions, and the system kind of seemed to me to be a supportive part. And this is a question for Odette. Do you feel that the system can be at a certain point a, let's call it, equal partner, or can it even be a system where I can be, you know, on the supporting side, that maybe the system takes over the responsibility for what is happening, and I can merely be a supporter in it? And if so, what needs to happen to get there?
Repeat the question. So the system was more of a supporting role in the concert, and the question is, can it become an equal partner or even a leading partner supported by a musician? And the answer is a bit complex. So at one level, if we're talking about the idea of AI, any sentence that starts with AI will never X is something that no one should ever say, because we really don't know. But I think the challenge of improvisation is so great, and we were talking about this, that some of the really fundamentally simple things that we humans take for granted in doing music, listening to music, engaging with music, thinking about music, are still not solved at, you know, so we listen to music and we can all absent-mindedly tap and we find a beat. Almost all of us find a beat without ease. If you don't, then go to see a neurologist. And the computers, even the kind of the most advanced systems, cannot do it unless it's kind of really, really click track to its death pop song. Like in this kind of playing with this, it doesn't work. And people have been working on this problem for 30 years and still haven't solved it. So there is something really a huge gap between our musical capabilities and what we currently can imbue a system with. And I think that to me indicates that the part where the system will be as versatile and flexible and creative and inventive and adaptable as a good performer is very, very far away. At the same time, I mean, there are different modes where you can listen to this. We had this meeting with in Paris with a guy who's been developing also a system that can improvise Somax. And for a while we tried to say, okay, what happens if his system listens to my system and my system listens to his system? Get David out of the way completely. And what came out were kind of nice sounds, a nice kind of dynamic sound. And we can we can create a kind of nice installation where we put it in this room and people wander around the room and experience nice sounds. And have a good, and we thought there is a potential there, you know, particularly if we add some cameras that track you and influence the sound, there is potential there, but notice it's a kind of a different type of engaging with music, right? I don't see putting this computer on stage and delivering a recital performance as anything that anyone should want to go and listen to. Right, and that's one of the kind of main things that I still think that the fact that we see the humans and the social interaction bit is really important between what's happening on stage and this, and also the kind of subtle non-verbal cues that are exchanged between performers that are, again, something that is totally beyond the system and might be able to kind of be solved at some point, but it's kind of another kind of big problem. So I don't see the kind of an equal partnership coming soon.
Having heard that, in the last improvisation we did together, I felt that the motivic agenda came from the system, not me. I actually had a totally different idea, and suddenly that came, and it was so wonderful that I just, you know, forget it, and I went with that. So, but that is not something you can pre-plan, I think.
Yes?
In creating the AI, I was wondering how you handle the differences between absolute music and program music. And then within the themes of program music, where you have to do different setups for different themes.
So the question is, how do I deal the difference between absolute music and program music? And for those of you who are not familiar, so there was this kind of thing emerging in the 19th century that music can tell a real story, and you can write a symphony based on Byron and turn the poetry into kind of a sound in some ways. And the short answer is that we are so far behind in our musical ability to deal with absolute and program music. We're just not even close to that level of sophistication and understanding of meaning and information. We are just at a kind of much more basic level of being able to listen to what these guys are doing. And I mean, even the level of listening to these guys and doing and understanding that we shifted from C major to G major, even that doesn't always happen. So program music is way above the ability of this machine.
So part of what program music is in the ear of the beholder. And Yulia said that she's listening programmatically. She said she hears this event, you know, this dance happen when you do something, or this event happen. And I think that that's inherent in listening. So we shouldn't belittle the fact that there is imagery, musical imagery that's emerging and can be harnessed in interesting ways.
Yeah. I mean, thanks you for the correction, because it's really is important. But I think kind of as the kind of AI programmer, I think kind of thinking at that kind of what would be the musical imagery that is evoked by this is so far removed from what I can actually implement that it's difficult. It's kind of not conducive as a design principle. If you could. By the way, this conversation has been going on for 35 years.
For decades. So I will say one more thing and then I'll shut up. When you put a toddler in front of a keyboard and you say, tell me a story, and they'll say, this is the bear, and these are and they'll tell you a musical story. So I think that that I think a much easier way to approach this would be from the toddler's point of view, right? Would be to build a system that actually builds in imagery that's shared by many people. And this will put you back 20 years, but you'll arise with something that's very different and perhaps interesting.
Maybe I can just briefly add that in a way we have the human in there because you are operating the system. And there are some scientific research has already shown that there are some universalities in terms of what people experience as a soft sound. It's not like it's soft, you can touch it or anything, but we describe it with a tactile sensation or a hard sound or a scratching sound. It's not that it actually happens, but we have some physical embodied experience of it. And your modules, as you call them, instruments as you sometimes call it, they do have these different, may I say, qualities or tactile sensations to them, and you are operating them. So perhaps it's not surprising that we have imagery also because we share yours. Right, in a sense, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, when I say that what the system produces has to be good in every situation, in a sense that's kind of the I mean, it's not the way I think about good. How does it tell a story? Because I'm a different composer than Jonathan is. But I think these kind of nebulous aesthetic approaches of me having to design a system that, to me, it's this kind of opening opportunities for the listeners to listen musically, right? And the way, whether they do it through imagery or through storytelling or through other means, I suspect it's kind of part individually, and maybe there are universals, but I'm not in the mode of being a kind of focus group composer, right? Kind of like what everybody does this, so that's what I'll stick in there, right? But I think that kind of I imbue the system with my aesthetic sensibilities, and one of the criteria is the kind of stimulate the audiences to imagine, to be imaginatively engaged with music. And that's true when I compose music, and it's true when I create this situation.
Maybe perhaps one final question, if we have one. Yes, Amy.
Thank you so much. I don't want to do David and Raphael's job, but I'm interested in what would happen if you were working with the system with other kinds of instruments and performers. And I guess the difference between how it listens and how it voices itself, and in terms of the module. So if you were going to put the microphones and the pickup on a violin or a singer, what would arguably, what would come out similar and what would come out different? And is it another 20 years work to get there, or is it something that you are going to explore sooner rather than later?
Yeah, so
What's the question?
let me repeat the question, sorry. The question is, what happens if I bring a musician, a singer or a violinist or whatever, plug this system, connect this system with an instrument that isn't a piano? And the very short answer is, I don't know. To explain a bit more kind of the thinking, the system listens, tries to listen. And it tries to listen in two ways, and I'll try to make it not technical. One, it tries to listen to onsets, when the start of the note. And of course, a piano is kind of a percussive, so all the onsets are very clear, except if they're playing really, really softly, it won't catch it. But to catch an onset that is very different type of onset, so that will already change how the system behaves. And the other thing is that a violin is a violin and flute singer. They are what we call monophonic instruments, so they can only play generally one note at a time, unless you do some crazy stuff. But let's mostly one note at a time. So there will be a reason, and the piano, of course, plays a lot, can play a lot. So when it comes to detecting pitch, the instruments, I'm trying to detect harmony in some way, and of course, detecting harmony from a flute doesn't make really a lot of sense. But on the other hand, it makes a lot of sense to track the melody. So I'll have to kind of change from listening to harmony to listening to melody, which will mean that the modules that generate this will have to be reconfigured and stuff. The other thing is that instruments like flute and violin stuff have more timbral control. So when they hold a note, they can do vibrato and the things that pianos are not. And these nuances can be really important, and it will be useful if we can implement listening on that level. So that's another challenge. And the final thing is that the sounds I'm producing are, of course, when I kind of decided on these sounds and created the synthesizer that create them, these sounds, I had the kind of piano interaction with the piano in mind. And some of them may work as they are with other instruments. Some of them may sound really awkward with other instruments, and maybe some others, working with another instrument may give me ideas for completely different sound worlds and behaviors that I can do. So, yeah, it's another item on the to-do list.
All right, then this fantastic evening has come to an end. I want to thank you, the audience, for coming and enjoying this with me. I think the system will never say never, but I think never really appreciate applause. But I'm sure the performers and the panelists will. So please join me in thanking them for this evening.